was 15 for 15.
You got 16.
I'd like to call this meeting of the City of Elkhorn Common Council to order. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Bruce Lechner is absent. Tim Sharota.
Here.
Gary Payson Jr.
Here.
Ron Dunwoody.
Here.
Scott McClory.
Here.
Ken Meinel.
Here.
Carol Young.
Here.
Do we have anybody here tonight for public comment? Asking again, public comment? Hearing none, we will go on to the consent agenda. We have the meeting minutes for the Common Council, September 18th, 2023. Temporary B beer licenses for the Walworth County Agricultural Society at the Walworth County Fairgrounds, rodeos. There's an attached list with the dates and times. And we have the pay request number 4 for Rock Road Companies regarding the 2023 East Centralia Street Reconstruction Project in the amount of $1,317,868.32. Can we put these all together, or would someone like to pull one out?
I'd like to make the motion that we pull C out and have a roll call vote on it, please.
Okay, can we maybe get a motion on A and B?
So moved.
Okay, I'll second.
We've got a motion and a second on item A and B of the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A and B pass. Item C on the consent agenda, the pay request number 4 in the stated amount.
I just have one question, if we can. Are you all satisfied with the work that's progressed and they've met all timelines and datelines for payment of this bill?
Yeah, so far. So I guess, are you referring to the schedule itself or to the actual work being done, or?
Yeah, I think that as far relating to the schedule, we just received an update on Friday of last week. It was later in the day. They're looking towards the end of October. We received a hard date, but I think in general, paving will be done probably around the third week of October and final completion by the end of October. So I haven't heard anything from Wyatt or Kapoor regarding any issues with the contractor. I've heard good things about communication. I know it's been rough going out there for them. It's a bigger project, but I don't know, Mike, if you've heard.
Just a few, there's been, certain issues that we've been dealing with, but nothing extraordinary that is a problem. Typical construction stuff, broken curb that they have to fix, that kind of thing.
Thank you. Then I would make the motion that we pay request number 4 in the amount of $1,317,868.32.
I'll second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Ron Dunwoody.
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.
Yes.
Tim Sharota.
Yes.
Carol Young.
Yes.
Ken Meinel.
Yes.
Scott McClory.
Yes.
Next, we have a presentation from Amber Drewski with Clifton Larson and Allen for a overview of the 2022 audit. If you'd like to come up to the podium, Amber.
I think it's on, right? Is
Yeah.
it? Excellent. So my name is Amber Juriski. I'm a principal with CLA in our state and local government group. So this kind of stuff is exclusively what we do out of that group. So this came out on Friday. I know that you might not have a full printed copy. You will get a full printed copy. And so I'm just going to go over it from an overview standpoint. Adam, Corey, everybody has my contact information. After you go through that, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to have any conversation or answer any questions that you may have. So, and if you have any questions during this, please feel free to interrupt. So I'm going to go through The financial statements, just very quickly, a couple points, but then your governance communication has some summarized information that I would like to touch on that covers some of the higher level type items. So if we go to, if you can scroll to on the document that you have up here, right here, if you can just scroll to page 1, the independent auditor's report. So the full intention of an audit is obviously you receive we come through, look through the books, look through your internal controls, but our whole purpose is to issue an audit opinion on the financial statements of the city. So that's this document starting on the first page. So we have audited the accompanying financial statements of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of the city of Elkhorn for the year ended December 31st, 2022. The second paragraph, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the city as of December 31st, 2022. That's a clean, unmodified opinion. That's the best opinion we can provide from an audit standpoint. Because that's clean doesn't necessarily mean that we didn't make adjustments or we don't have recommendations, and I'll get to some of that as we go on. But the basis for the opinion, obviously, we don't look at every transaction of the city. We use a risk-based test approach, and that's done through inquiry of the city, past experience, materiality thresholds, etc. This bottom paragraph, the emphasis of matter, there was a new standard, GASB standard for 2022, and that related to leases. So those became immaterial. We did not have to implement, but that's what would be in this paragraph. This paragraph exactly refers to an adjustment that was made relating back to prior years. We had, the city had capitalized in construction in progress some costs in the water utility that should have been expensed. And so that adjustment was made, and you will see that on the financial statements if you see it called a prior period adjustment. But again, we did evaluate for the new standard for GASB 87. That technically would be an emphasis of matter. They were immaterial. For fiscal year 23, you will have another new standard, GASB statement number 96, as it relates to subscription-based softwares. So the next page talks about management's responsibility. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements. Our responsibilities are detailed below to perform an audit underneath the standards. Then I'm going to scroll all the way to the back. If you could scroll all the way to the back, excuse me, all the way to page 70 on the bottom. And as I mentioned, as part of the audit,
No, it's not there.
right there. There you go. Thank you. As part of the audit, we also review the internal controls of the city, and we would be required to disclose any findings or non-compliance that we have. So we do not issue an opinion. This letter explains that, but we would explain. So we have 3 findings that we can consider to be material weaknesses, and I'll explain those on the next page. So if you can scroll to the next page. We had, at the top of this, the report on compliance and other matters. There was no non-compliance that we were required to disclose. That's different than those findings that, if you go to the next page, start on. So the first finding is adjustments to the financial records. So as part of the audit, we receive a trial balance, and then we evaluate, tie that out to supporting documentation, and would make any adjustments as necessary. There is a list of, I'm going to say summarized adjustments that we make in the governance communication. Corey does receive that full list. She does review that entire list. We go through that, and they've been, I'm going to say, especially over the last few months, been really making a good effort at, do we understand all of these? What are these? How can we make them in the future? And really working through that process. So I'm excited about that. I think that'll be better for you guys from a decision-making standpoint, because we make a number of adjustments that if you get reports throughout the year and all of a sudden you compare it to the audit, they may differ significantly. So especially in the capital area primarily and the debt area, those are really the 2 areas that I would say would be the biggest focus areas. So that's what this finding primarily relates to. Any material journal entries we make, we're required to disclose that as a material weakness in the financial statement. So that's the same across the board at any client. If you go to the next finding, this is the preparation of the financial statements. So this means that we prepared the financial statements and the disclosures. We prepare about 95% of our clients' financial statements. And that's primarily due to the complexity of the standards and the disclosures. What we ask the clients to do then is thoroughly review them. The city has done that. They've sent back questions. So they review and approve the document that you receive. So the next page is segregation of duties. So this is a new finding for 2022, and this primarily relates to journal entries. This has been an area of concern that I know that I've talked about, that we've talked about, from a review and approval standpoint of who's preparing that journal entry, who's entering it, who's approving it, etc. You ideally want to separate those duties. You did have controls in place over cash transfers from the bank. There were required to be multiple approvers there. But on the books in the general ledger, and Corey can talk about this a little bit, but the journal entries that were being posted were significant numbers, and then they were being reversed because they were not being done properly the first time, and then potentially being done another 2-3 times. And that creates some confusion, not only for us from an audit standpoint, but a risk that maybe something's not being caught. And then if you talk about the reports that you receive maybe on a monthly or yearly basis, could have some inconsistencies within those numbers. So we have recommended that whoever prepares that journal entry, somebody else outside of that reviews that. Obviously, you don't want that to be a check the box situation. You really want somebody to understand what that journal entry is doing, what the intent is, and the purpose. So make sure that that's the best fit for the person to be reviewing. So if there's questions on that, that is new, but I think they have that under control and are making some changes there. So. Then if you can go to the governance communication, I'll talk about some financial highlights within this document.
Next document.
Yes, the governance communication. Yep, that one. So page 1 of this governance communication kind of summarizes the audit opinion, the internal controls that I just mentioned. It talks, page 1 about halfway through, talks about the accounting policy, GASB 87, but then talks about the accounting estimates, the depreciable life of your capital assets, the accumulated sick leave. On page 2, it continues with your IBNR for your self-insurance, your net pension liability or asset for the Wisconsin Retirement System proportionate share, and your OPEB for the Wisconsin State Life Insurance proportionate share. No difficulties encountered in performing the audit, aside from, with the timing of your treasurer leaving and just some of those reconciling items. But I think, like I said, I think you're headed in the right direction. So that's really good. The correct and misstatements at the bottom of page 2 of that governance letter just, again, summarizes some of those adjustments. And if there's any questions on those, Corey has the full list of those. No disagreements with management. Those are all the required pieces I have to say. So now the financial piece from a summary level. On page 5 of that same document, if you could zoom in a little bit. So the governmental fund balance, your general fund, at December 31st, 2022, the general fund had about $3.8 million in fund balance, with about just shy of 3.5 of that being available in unassigned fund balance. The unassigned fund balance is kind of like a rainy day fund. If you think about your own personal finances, the recommendation is always 3 to 6 months of expenditures. That's the same for governments, is the unassigned there. The recommendation that we have is that you maintain anywhere from 20 to 35% of your general fund expenditures within that balance. And that depends, that's a wide range, right? 20 to 35. But that depends upon your cash flow, what kind of condition your infrastructure and your capital is in, and so forth, those types of things. What kind of insurance you have. If you're self-insured, are you going to have to maybe use some of that funds? Do you have reserves, et cetera? All of those goes into that decision of what should that balance really look like. You're currently at about 47%, so a very healthy fund balance, which allows you some flexibility. If you have to do some one-time projects, one-time expenses, that's what that would be used for. Obviously, you don't want to use that to continuously balance budgets or use that for reoccurring payroll expenses, because you will eat into that total and it will continue to come down over time. Debt service had approximately $1.3 million in fund balance. And then your special revenue funds, library, I'm just going to read these off. Library, about $182,000. Your parks, park dedication, about $124,000. The drug education, about $12,000. The park dedication, that $124,000 is restricted, and that's restricted from outside donors. So the remaining amount that's not restricted from outside entities is $234,000. Ambulance has about $2.4 million. And development about $651,000. Tax incremental district number 4 has a deficit fund balance of about $140,000. Obviously, that's still fairly new, and will continue to change over time here. Capital projects. There's prepaid items of about $25,000, but your general capital projects fund has about $1.8 million. Most of that being some unspent bond proceeds and some additional charges for services in there. And that's usually a timing of when that comes down. Vehicle replacement, about $947,000 remaining in that fund at December 31st. Your total governmental fund balance was about $11.4 million. If you go to page 6, at the top of page 6, I referenced that 20 to 35% of the general fund unassigned fund balance from a kind of a fund balance benchmark perspective. The city has a policy in place, and some of this goes back, but you were supposed to, the city's saying you should have about 1.8 million, and you have about 3.4. So we just want to make a point that you're meeting that current policy as it was at that point in time. The bottom of page 6 and the top of page 7 just shows the graphs of what those general fund balance categories look like in terms of the expenditures and over a 5-year period. Again, I talked about the vehicle replacement fund having a balance of about $947,000, and then your debt service. So your debt service, the city has a policy not to exceed 65% of the statutory limit. And you can see the limit is in red, 65% is the light blue, and your outstanding GO debt is just below that, that line there. If you go to page 8, solid waste, I'm just going to capture this as at a high level, not much change from year to year. A net position, a deficit of about $14,000. Compared to about 2,000. That's always, what that says is just continuing to evaluate what your rates are and looking at what your expenses are. Maybe there were some one-time expenses in 2022 that you won't have in 2023, but otherwise looking at rates and making sure that they're meeting the needs of the expenditures. Page 9 is the sewer utility. And so the total operating revenues for the sewer was about $3.2 million. Total operating expenses about 2.4, just shy of 2.4 million. Both of those numbers fairly consistent, both decreased slightly from 2021. Your total change in net position about 800,000, coming to a total net position of about 14 million. And that had generated operating income of 861,000. The sewer had the sewer the city has control over in terms of rates, unlike the water utility where you have to go through the Public Service Commission. And so what we're saying here is continue to evaluate your expenses over time, what your cash flows are, and make sure that your rates are structured so that they cover that. What we like to say is that the cash flow, you want your cash flow from operations to cover capital and debt. And if you cover that, then you're okay, but you want to keep in mind what your long-term plan is. 3-5 years down the road, do you need to be building a cash reserve to be able to fund maybe some higher maintenance projects, or do you have a significant capital project that you need to put some cash on hand into? So I'm just going to jump. You can stay on that page, but I'll give you some totals. So the sewer utility generated cash flows from operations of about $560,000. The total net capital and debt was about $930,000. So the change in cash and cash equivalents for sewer was a deficit of $300,000, bringing the total cash down to $5.2 million. That's hard to use as a judgment in a 1-year period of time. You want to look at it over a couple years because you might have some years where you borrowed funds, but you didn't spend all of it in that same year. It'll come out the following year. So you want to continue to evaluate that maybe over a 3-year period and see where your cash flow is sitting and that net impact. But really looking at what that cash flow from operations are and does it cover your capital and debt. So if we go to the next page, I will go into, I believe it's the water utility. So the water utility had total operating revenues of about $3.9 million and operating expenses of about $4.2 million. That led to a net operating loss of $327,000 and a total change in net position of about $558,000 to a deficit. If we talk about the cash flow situation for water, water had a deficit cash flow from operating activities of $39,000 and a total net change in cash of a deficit of $1.3 million. Water only had $73,000, I believe, in operating cash to the positive at December 31st, 2022. There is $3 million, just over $3 million in cash, but that's all restricted for debt reserve requirements. So I know that you went through a rate case process. Continue to evaluate that even after you have that in place. My biggest recommendation is make sure that you're evaluating a simplified rate case each year after that. You have to wait 1 year after your rates are in place. Continue to evaluate that simplified. Currently, the simplified's at 8.5%. I don't think it's going to stay at 8.5%. Normally, it's about 3%. But continue to evaluate that and apply, see if the city applies, because right now you're in a position where if you have a significant maintenance project, you'd have to borrow for it, likely. And when you borrow for maintenance projects, those are non-capital. If you go the general obligation route, you don't have the option to put that on your tax levy. You don't have the ability to just raise rates at any way, so you're going to be borrowing from your sewer fund or your general fund. So continuously be proactive about that. Over the next, it's going to be a little bit of time before that kind of takes a swing, but make sure that throughout that process, you're making sure that your cash flow is giving you enough to do things like paint the water tower, a well rehab, all those items that are non-capital in nature. The rate of return, if you go to that next page on the water utility, the rate of return was a deficit of 2.8. Your authorized rate of return, I believe, is 5 or 5.5%. So you can see where that kind of falls short. That will alternate year to year depending upon what those maintenance expenses are. In 2022, there were a lot of engineering one-time type expenses, again, that are non-capital. So if you go to the next page, the electric utility. Electric had total operating revenues of about $15.1 million, total operating expenses of about $14.5, a total change in net position of about $78,000, coming to a total net position at the end of the year of about $15.6 million. If you go to page 13, I'm just going to go right to the rate of return here. So here's the electric rate of return from the PSC report. Went from about 2% in 2021 to just over 3% in 2022. Obviously, that depends upon purchase power, but you're charging that out usually in most of that, or recouping most of that through the adjustments throughout the year. But again, electric can be the same from a cash flow perspective. So cash generated from operating activities was just shy of $700,000 in 2022, and the total change in cash was a deficit of about $260,000. So the total cash for electric is just short of $5.4 million, with 1.6 of that being operating cash. Electric is the same as water, where you're restricted by the Public Service Commission, and so continue to evaluate that as well over time of what are my needs going to be? Do I have any major capital projects? Do I need to, or maintenance projects? And do I have enough cash on hand to fund those? Or what's my plan? And really look at that long-term capital plan, 3 to 5 years. And that's not just the utility side, sewer, water, electric. The same thing can be said on the general from a governmental standpoint. Equipment, roads, et cetera, and how are those going to be funded? Really understanding that process. The remainder of that document, if you go, there's a little bit, talks about your internal service funds. I can let you, that net position for 2022 was about 1.8 million. So a healthy fund balance there, but you never know from a self-insurance standpoint if you have large claims, and that can change quickly. But the remainder of that document, it talks about the new accounting standards. I mentioned GASB statement number 96. So there's a paragraph that discusses that along with the 87 leases. And then the rest of that is the management representation letter, management taking responsibility for the financial statements. Any questions on that? If not, as I mentioned, I'd be happy to answer any at any point in time. Otherwise, Corey does a great, and Adam, both of them do a great job of reaching out with any questions. You can filter any of them through them. Otherwise, that's all I have for tonight.
Any questions? No? Nope. Well, thank you, Amber. Very, very informative.
Excellent. Thank you.
We've got a report of city officers. I have nothing for the mayor's report. Adam, city administrator?
Yeah, just to follow up on the audit, as Amber alluded to, it just got done on Friday, so didn't give a lot of time for getting that circulated, and we actually didn't even get a copy of it until this morning. So, but we would have pushed her presentation back to the next meeting, but actually Ellers is coming to talk about debt and impact on taxes, the tax rates for the next meeting, so we didn't want to double you up with too much finance for one meeting, so that's why Amber came tonight. So I just wanted to clarify that. But as I kind of alluded to at the last meeting, I had the Walworth County Economic Development Alliance had a housing summit about 2 weeks ago on September 25th. That was really well attended, had 140 people. So it was good to talk to a lot of businesses and developers and other people in the community. Speaking of housing, the Planning Commission has a public hearing this Thursday about the Creekside General Development Plan. So obviously that project's been ongoing now for a good year and a half in terms of from preliminary stages to where we're at now. So that GDP public hearing is on Thursday at 6. Personnel news, we have a new employee, a new customer account clerk, Tina Zabler, started today. She's replacing, or I should say, she's replacing Rebecca Perez, who, as the council is aware, was appointed the new deputy clerk in August. So we are now thankfully finally fully staffed. So I know from a personnel perspective, people are excited about that. Now we just have to obviously do the training. So that's the fun part. But I could just say too, as far as the audit goes, that having our new treasurer, Chris Brigler here, he's already, been super helpful because of his auditing background. So I know he had a lot of really good changes and questions when he saw it. So I think it's gonna be really helpful going forward, having him with his background, so we're excited about that. And just lastly, I haven't gotten any news. As the council is aware, there's a current CUP and rezoning going on in the township, Sugar Creek, on Voss Road. We haven't gotten any updates on when that town board hearing has been rescheduled, so we will let you know when we know. But we haven't heard anything. My understanding is that the applicant had to submit a new site plan because his project plans changed, so that had to be submitted. I do have a meeting tomorrow with the county tomorrow morning to find out what they know about it, and the applicant actually came into on Friday, stopped in about 12 o'clock just to talk to me about kind of what the project was about. So I did talk to Mr. Nedesheim for about 45 minutes. So that's kind of where we're at with that, but I don't know if council has any questions about.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Yeah, certainly we'll keep council updated on what we know and when we hear it, so those are my updates.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Unfinished business, the discussion regarding the proposed special event permit application from Ski Extreme Productions to use Elkhorn Lake in September of '24. Where are we at with that?
Basically, where we're at right now is we were seeking information from the applicant. We didn't get that information apparently till last night at midnight is what? Yeah. So we just put this on the agenda purely because the council, the last time you talked about it, had postponed a decision or discussion until tonight. So you guys wanted it on tonight's agenda, so therefore it was on the agenda, even if unfortunately.
So we can postpone it again.
Correct. That's kind of where we're at.
So there you go, it's postponed.
Do we need a motion to postpone it again?
I make a motion to postpone if we need to. Then you're covered.
Our intent is to bring it back once it's ready for council to actually make a decision. I know the Park and Rec Board is gonna, I think, talk about it again, and the Special Event Committee still has to talk about it. And with permission of the chair, I forgot that I was gonna ask during my reports, yep, sorry, Matt. Matt was gonna give an update about leaf collection and I think also Centralia, but we did talk about Centralia earlier, so I don't know if you're okay
Yeah,
with.
absolutely.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that, Adam. Yeah, Centralia, again, end of October is our anticipated completion from a schedule that we just received on Friday. As far as our leaf vac collector, it's scheduled to leave ODB on October 20th, so it's later than what they had said even 2 weeks ago. We did recently pick up a surplus unit from an adjacent municipality, which is at a significant discount, so that's great. That's really going to help us in the first coming weeks of leaf collection, but right now we still plan on doing it internally. I know I've talked to Waste Management, as I've mentioned, and if we do need them, they are in our back pocket. I could call them up and get them en route, but as of right now, we still plan on doing it internally.
Okay, thank you. Are we all set then, Adam? We're ready to move on?
Yes, yeah.
All right. New business, we have a discussion and possible decision regarding execution of a contract regarding municipal solid waste and recycling services with Badgerland Disposal.
So do you want to take this one, Adam? Okay, I've been working with Susan from LRS in putting this together. We've been through a couple of different iterations. We did send it over to Leeson Phillips to take a look at. Ward has not had a chance to, at least since of last week, he hasn't had a chance to review it. But we did get comment back from Ms. Nichols that she had taken a look at it. I talked to Joel this morning about a couple of things. LRS is comfortable waiting until the 16th. If we choose to, wait to approve this, then that's certainly fine. We wouldn't want to probably push it too much later than the end of October because they still need to order new carts and everything like that. So it's good to keep this moving forward, but if the council would like to wait until Ward has a chance to review it, I think that's fine. I really wanted to have it on the agenda anyways, even if Ward hadn't had a chance, because if there's anything glaring that you guys see that you don't like or that you think needs to be changed, I wanted to have that opportunity so that we're not bringing this back on the 16th and then something major changes. So I think we're 99% there, unless council sees something again that they're not happy with or they feel needs massaging.
Just waiting on review from the attorney. I reviewed it all.
I've looked at it.
We're waiting on them.
Okay, the comments that Joel had were, and I appreciate Joel's been taking a hard look at it with me, and I appreciate that. Were kind of minor, but I think they're just minor edits that we'll make too as well. So we'll just wait to get Ward's feedback then.
Okay.
Is it reasonable to think that we'd be able to have that by like the end of this week, or do you know?
It really depends on how Ward's feeling. He's
Mhm.
still sick, so I'm not sure.
Okay, all right, thank you. If we don't have it on the agenda for the 16th, I guess I would just ask that maybe we do a special meeting at the end of October. If we didn't, not that Adam's giving me a glare, but.
Ward should be back by the 16th.
Okay, but I still would need to give LRS a chance to review it as well, so,
All right, thanks, Matt.
thank you.
We've got a discussion and possible decision regarding authorizing Kapoor and Associates to design speed calming measures for McLean Road.
So I'd speak on this one too. We just got this from Kapoor late last week. Regarding McLean Road, we've heard from several residents. We've talked to Gary multiple times about just speed, traffic speeding down there. We did purchase a radar speed sign, which came to council a couple of months ago. And PD has gathered some data, and we've been taking a look at that data. We spoke with Kapoor about additional traffic calming measures, and they sent us some information. A couple of things that they had recommended was, or that we could do, would be to add pavement markings on the sides of the road to maybe make it look visually like it's your lane is smaller by hopefully reducing speed. But we didn't think that would probably reduce speed to what it probably should be. We talked a little bit about speed bumps and speed tables. Speed bumps are a little bit more aggressive than speed tables, and then looking at that area, if we were to choose to go with a route like this, that would probably be more applicable for that setting. I asked Kapoor to provide some pros and cons for speed tables, and I'm just going to kind of go through those here. The pros would be they encourage the motorists to travel at a slow speed with both upstream and downstream, as well as over the speed bump. Or speed table rather. Emergency vehicle can cross them, but it does slow the vehicle down. The speed tables are less delay than a speed hump for emergency vehicles. The cons are typically a delay for a fire truck is around 3 to 5 seconds range. For an ambulance with a patient, delay can be as much as 10 seconds. Some of the other cons are travel speed slightly faster than a speed hump for the speed tables. And there's a potential for increased noise due to vehicle braking and accelerating due to the vibration of loose items in truck beds or trailers. So what's on the agenda tonight would be for the council to consider, if they'd like to move forward on it, just the design component of the project. We don't have any prices from contractors, so this is just an estimate that we got from Kapoor. So the design, let me just jump to it here in the agenda. So this is the estimate that we got from Kapoor. The total anticipated project cost is around $22,000, I guess maybe closer to 23. They've got a contingency of $3,000, a little over 3, and then an engineering design, which would be $2,900. So what's on the agenda tonight for your consideration would be to authorize Kapoor to design the project at $3,000. And then I would gather some estimates from some contractors, and then we could bring it back to move forward on it, or you could, have it not to exceed. We talked internally about ways of how we could pay for it. We heard back from Kapoor's office that for the 2023 Centralia Street project, their design contract that they have currently with us is around $25,000 under the anticipated cost. So there's a surplus there. That could be a spot where, you could look to pay for this work, if that's what the council chooses.
So just clarify, when we were originally talking, we were talking about the speed hump design is what we were looking at doing. That really slow people down. When we had our meeting at before last council, was the speed hump was probably the best idea based on what I experienced going up to Milwaukee every day. It will slow people down. And I'd rather have them slow down than hit a kid. Because as I've stated, even the neighbors are putting signs up now about slowing down. So the sign does validate everything that we've been saying out there. So we got to do a natural result, which is the speed humps, which will slow them down.
Okay, I just wanted to help council too, if, in case they weren't aware. So a speed hump is typically, it's a rounded raised area placed across the roadway. It's typically 12 to 14 feet in length. A speed table is a long speed hump, basically. It's typically 22 feet in length with a flat section in the middle of it and ramps on the ends. So it's less aggressive than a speed hump or bump.
If memory serves, this only impacts your district, yes?
That is correct.
Yeah, and your people want the hump, not the table.
They want stop signs. They want people ticketed. They want people to stop. They're tired of seeing people speed through.
Right.
So
But as far as the calming of the road,
whatever it takes to slow people down. That's what we need.
This stop signs, looking at that, looking at the MUTCD, which is a federal document for traffic control, and this wouldn't be a situation where stop signs would be supported by federal guidelines.
Right. So, and that's why we were looking at alternatives.
right, my question to you then, representing your constituents, is do you want the hump, or you want the bump, or do you want the table? Well, I mean, there's different,
Yeah,
there's
there
different,
is.
there's pros and cons to all
Yeah.
of them, and there's different costs, and
So,
it's gonna impact you, so I'm gonna
Oh,
defer to you. I
yeah,
mean,
so-
I don't wanna offer my opinion.
the speed humps is ideal, but some of the people I've talked to in the neighborhood. So even with the speed humps, design costs would be about $3,000, so we could lay something out with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'd make a motion to approve to do the design and see what the costs are gonna be with the speed humps.
I'll second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I think you gotta do roll call.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
That's- we're
because it
spending
has to
money.
do with
Oh,
money.
that's right, we are.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Ken Minell,
Yes.
Carol Young,
Yes.
Tim Sharota,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody.
Yes.
All right, then we've got a discussion regarding the preliminary 2024 general fund budget and levy for taxes payable in 2024.
Yeah, so we've been working hard the last few months on our budget for all of our funds, but most significantly, the general fund. In my memo outlines, some of the key aspects of that. So I guess I'd just say that, we're looking at a potential general fund budget increase of about 8.73%. And I highlighted some of the main reasons for those increases. One, personnel, healthcare costs continue to be a huge driver. That's what I heard too when I went to the chief executives workshop about a month ago. All the Wisconsin cities that were there were all talking about seeing really significant healthcare costs, particularly those that were self-funded. I know that Appleton and I think one of the other communities is still self-funded, and they were looking at 10 to 15% increase of cost for those communities. So it's definitely a problem. And as I indicated in the memo, it makes it really hard for planning because they're just the medical claims that we pay are so unpredictable, and they vary so much. It's like they can be really high January, February, March because it's the first part of the year, and then they kind of tail off a little bit during the year, and then it seems like the fall comes and they kind of ramp up. So predicting how much we need to budget for claims is always kind of a challenge, but we want to make sure that we're budgeting on the high side and hope for the best but preparing for the worst. That's our goal for next year, so that we're kind of budgeting at 90% of worst case scenario based upon what the Consociate Health has told us. So that's a big driver. One good thing is we are budgeting $100,000 for annual street maintenance this year, which normally we've been trying to bond for. This year, we're just looking to try and pay for it out of, regular tax levy and other, revenues. So that will reduce our bonding by $100,000. And then there's a backlog of pool expenses, some basic pool expenses that we're looking to pay for about $47,000. Those are some of the bigger ticket items. I included in the packet, you can see by departments, there's a kind of a summary page if you want to look at kind of the main areas. And then if you want to look at all the detail, I include the detail in there if you want to look at every GL account number, if you decide to look at that. A couple just good things about the budget this year are, in terms of, we did have some increases in revenues. Of course, we got the supplemental state aid of $250,000. I'm rounding there, but it's 259. We had 125,000, or I should say we're budgeting for 125,000 more in interest income for '24. We just found out late last week that our general transportation aid went up by 121,000, which was a huge shock to us. So it was really great news, because we were looking at a budget deficit, and that gave us to a surplus. So we're excited about that. Of course, I say surplus, meaning that not really a surplus, because we're obviously borrowing millions of dollars for public works projects. So let me clarify that. But in terms of just our basic operating expenses, it put us a little bit over. But again, I want to back up and say too that, you know, even the surplus I talk about, we've had to, every year, the city's had to transfer more and more of our the capital expenses to bonding costs, and paying less of those capital costs out of our budget. So, and even for next year, we're not covering as much in capital expenses than we have in the past. So, I don't want to give people the wrong impression that we are doing great on financially. In terms of other additional revenues, we're expecting some additional contributions from fire and EMS, and that's just because one of the big things we're running into for EMS this year, and one of the reasons that something that's hit our budget, is that, in 2021, we had really high ambulance fees. Or I should say, sorry, 2022, we had really high ambulance fees. They went up significantly over 21 by the tune of $200,000, which was great so for this year, for 23, for budgeting, we thought, okay, we'll assume that we'll have the higher ambulance fees for 23, which then meant we had to have less tax levy to, pay for that for EMS. Well, at least thus far through the year, the ambulance fees are looking much similar to 2021. So we're on pace for about $200,000 less of ambulance fees. Well, how do you supplement that? It's coming straight from tax levy. So as a result, that's really hit our tax levy revenues. But as a result, because we're having to contribute more from our tax levy, well, the towns are going to have to contribute more as well. And then lastly, Carl's planning on some new programming next year, some is it 5K, or what are the ages for your before and after
school?
So we're starting before and after school program. We have an agreement with the Elkhorn School District to fall under their busing umbrella, so that'll be kindergarten through 5th grade. There's currently a wait list for all the schools right now, so we're definitely doing a program of need in the community, and typically before and after school programs do operate in the green. From my experience, I've had almost 10 years of experience in that now. So yeah, we're excited to offer our community a program that will benefit the community and also help our department as well.
So we're counting on that. And then lastly, we did get into about 20,000 more in connecting highways aid as well. So it was good that we had some additional revenues come in this year to offset the big increase in some of our expenses. So those are the, I guess, basic general fund updates I have. I don't know if council has any questions about anything in the general fund thus far. No?
He's looking at me.
You're closest to me, so. In terms of just the tax levy, right now we're anticipating the tax levy the mill rate would go down from $7.20 per thousand of assessed value to $6.99 per thousand. But, we understand at the same time, people's assessed values and equalized values are going up. So, unfortunately, one's going down and one's going up. But anyway, I don't know if there are any other questions about the levy or general fund. If not, we'll continue to update the council and bring back more information at the next couple meetings.
Then we've got a discussion on the 24 through 28 capital improvement plan.
Oh, and when Amber was talking in her presentation about the importance of capital planning, I I swear we did not pay her to say that, but yeah, so we made the changes to the CIP that the council requested or instructed at the last meeting, so I guess I won't necessarily go through all those, but pretty much for a couple of those projects, we moved for the library and a couple of the park projects that got removed from 24. They've been pushed to 25, understanding that they may not happen in 25 either, but we just didn't want to lose track of them because they were deemed to be priorities by DPW and Park and Rec. And then I should say there was one typo in the spreadsheet you saw. The rec replacement vehicle is not being funded by previously issued geo debt. So unfortunately, I noticed that was a mistake in the spreadsheet. So that would fall under the geo debt category. And a couple of the projects that you wanted funded by the park department or park fund, we are, allocating that accordingly. I know Carl has indicated he's going to have to review his park projects for next year because I know he may not be able to fund everything that he wanted to do with the park fund next year. So we're going to have to, that's a section we have to work on, between now and the next, couple of meetings.
Yeah, and that'll be reviewed by the Park and Rec Board in October as well.
And then I just want to mention, as I said earlier, we did take out $100,000 of geo debt that was going to go for street maintenance, and that's now funded by the general fund. And then we did also allocate a $50,000 contribution from tax levy / general fund to the capital equipment replacement fund, which then we're using to pay towards one of the chief's PD vehicles. So that also helped reduce the amount we're having to borrow for next year. Although the downside being, the chief just told us this morning that one of the vehicles that was supposed to be delivered this year, and I think was actually supposed to be delivered even maybe last year, is now being delayed even further. So we have one PD vehicle that we don't know when we're going to get, so it's now going to have to get added to this, which we have funding from prior years, but of course the costs have gone up, so the chief is going to be giving us an updated cost estimate. And chief's not saying anything, so.
You got it all right, Adam.
Yeah. Which vehicle was that, chief?
It's the Explorer that we had ordered last, I want to say August or September, that originally we were told was actually going to be produced October. That got pushed back to November, and now the UAW in Chicago has shut that Chicago plant down that the Explorer's assembled at. So we'll see what happens.
So unfortunately, we may have to budget a little bit more next year's CIP to cover the increased price of that police vehicle. And those are.
So just real quick.
Yeah.
So we ordered it last year. Why are we going to pay more? Because they can't deliver. I'm in manufacturing. I don't get to raise my price because I didn't deliver. We had a contract, right?
Well, I can stop you, Gary. So I guess we don't know, I guess we assume or we hope that we'll be able to get it for what we have the purchase order already issued for this, because it will depend on when they switch over to, I believe, actually producing the 24 model year, because the 24 model year has different pricing. So like last year, for a vehicle that we had ordered in, I can't remember, I'm getting my years mixed up, but that order ended up getting canceled completely. So that purchase order that we had issued for that, they didn't even honor that for the next model year. We had to reorder. And that's kind of the same thing that's going on right now. We have to order by a date certain here in October for next year's 24 that has already seen an increase. So we're just hopeful that once the production line picks up again, that they're going to continue these 23s. Otherwise, they will just simply cancel that order and we'll have to start all over again.
Then we should probably be looking at somebody else. We can't continue to do this.
I agree
that's
to a
insane.
certain extent, except we're very limited in what we can get for police vehicles.
Look, business is business. They accept the PO, they accept the price. That or we placed the POs earlier. But it's unfortunate because you know, they're crying for more money, and here we are sitting here still trying to get something from over a year ago, a year and a half ago. It has nothing to do with the strike now, because if they would have done their jobs last year, we'd already have the car.
Right, I think it's just difficult. I don't think
Yeah.
the city of Elkhorn has a whole lot of pressure that they can put on Ford.
Well, I'm just saying that, you know, yeah, but if everybody does it, sooner or later, it affects the bottom line when nobody buys their stuff. Whoever, whatever manufacturer it is, or whoever's making it. So, that's my 2 cents. Sorry.
Any further questions about the capital improvement plan? Moving on to a discussion of possible decision regarding collecting a surcharge on city water customers outside city limits.
Yeah, so we were recently, as the council is aware, the city back in 2009 approved a 20% surcharge on Willow Run Condo Association, and during our water rate case application, that's something that the PSC has to approve. And so as part of that, the PSC has, we have to, formally apply for that as part of this process. And but the thing is, they don't allow you to sort of specify specific customers. It's anybody, if you're going to charge a surcharge, it's got to go against all non-city people. It can't just be one individual, property owner. So, and they also pretty much have kind of a standard 25% surcharge that they'll approve. They don't allow you to do less. I can't tell you why, but that's just what we've been told. So the question to the council is, do you want to assess a 25% surcharge? And thanks to Corey this morning, she crunched some numbers. We have 13 customers that would be impacted, 4 of which are county buildings. Most of the customers are, not surprisingly, out by the Lakeland area. And so there's 4 county buildings, and then also the Lakeland Medical Center is one of those facilities that would be impacted. In total, we bill those 13 customers $121,823.03 a year. So we estimate 25% of that would be, it costs $30,000 more per year in water charges across those 13 users. So, and that, like I said, includes Willow Run, but includes 12 other customers as well. So
Part of the audit was that we're underwater, pardon the pun, for water in the finance section. So, I mean, if the rest of us are paying, why shouldn't they? Right? So, I'd make a motion to increase our surcharge.
I second.
My only question would be, when do these people get told? Because obviously Lakeland Hospital can certainly afford a $30,000 increase, but maybe, people that are out in Willow Run are expecting to pay X amount on sometimes a limited budget. So we send them a notice now, this is effective 2024. So how are we going to go about that? I just want to give them as much time as possible.
well, ironically, Willow Run is actually in a good position because of the fact that the city had already approved a 20% surcharge back in '09.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was already in place. Unfortunately, the PSC, it was never approved by the PSC, unfortunately, at the time it was imposed. So
Okay.
to impose the 25% means the effect is they would actually be only paying a 5% more surcharge than what they had been paying. So for them, it's something they already were aware of. But
Good to know.
and that's why our biggest concern, honestly, was more of the other 12 customers who, so.
Okay.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Do we need a roll call vote on this? Probably not.
Yes, let's
Yes.
do a roll call, just to be
We'd
safe.
like a roll call vote.
Gary Payson Jr.,
Yes.
Carol Young. Ken Minell,
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody.
Yes.
Scott McClory,
Yes.
Tim Sharota.
Yes. All right, and then could I get a motion to adjourn to closed session, please?
So moved. Second, whatever, go.
We've got a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Third.
All right, we're,
Yes, please read it back to me and then I'll say, yes, that's what I said.
Okay, you can read the title. I'll read the motion.
we're reconvening back into open session. We had discussion and possible decision regarding offer to purchase of a parcel in the city property, tax key parcel YA 4784000002 out in the industrial park.
Okay, so there was a motion to approve the purchase. That was it. It was very simple.
Yeah,
For
that's my motion to approve the
For
purchase.
the amount.
For the amount that we, asked for.
Or the sale.
Or that was the sale of the parcel for the amount that we asked for. That's my motion.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
I thought we had a roll call today.
Roll call money again.
Yeah, man, anytime there's money.
Talk money, that's it.
Scott McClory.
This didn't happen under my watch.
Scott McClory.
Yes.
Ken Minell.
Yes.
Carol Young.
Yes.
Tim Sharota.
Yes.
Gary Payson Jr.
Yes.
Ron Dunwoody.
Yes.
And then the second item, possible discussion and decision of purchase or lease of property tax key YOP 00141. I think the council decided to take a wait and see add to it and just
Take no action?
No
take
action.
no action. There you go.
Yeah.
No action.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.